It's an interesting situation overall. So Rasheed Wallace was on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast in November of 2020. So that's 9-10 months ago. And he talked about LeBron James and also Kevin Durant, but we're going to focus on LeBron. About whether, what kind of player LeBron would be back in Sheed's era, which obviously overlapped with LeBron's era. Sheed came in the league in 1995. LeBron came in 2003. One of LeBron's greatest moments was at the hands of Rasheed Wallace when LeBron scored 48 points, I believe, in game 5 of the Eastern
at
Conference
the Palace.
Finals
Both of us
in
were
2007.
covering that game.
Yes. Yep. And LeBron was tremendous against that very good Detroit Pistons team, which featured Rasheed. But anyway, for some reason, and I guess the reason is that the podcast posted an excerpt from that interview, which again took place 10 months ago. They posted it on Facebook today. And so it's gone viral. It's trending. Everybody's talking about it. And it's very interesting to hear what Rasheed said. Here he is.
In my era, he probably would have done good because with his physical stature, with him being a little bit bigger than a majority of the rest. So he probably would have held his own, but I don't think he would have been as successful as he is now. Like now is, man, you know what I mean? Like he's doing it. Young boy doing it. You know what I mean? So, but it was a whole different era back then, bro.
So, beast or soft?
I just told you.
Beast then.
I think he would have held his own. I can't necessarily say he would have been a beast, but I think he would have held his own.
Because that was the question, right? The way they worded the question was, would LeBron be a beast or would he be soft? Beast or soft had he played in your era? I'll give you first stab at this, Rob, because I'll just say I'm baffled.
And listening to it, though, it wasn't like he went after him. Oh, he couldn't have played. He would have been a bum. I'm just...
Well, that would be...
I know. But he said he would have held his own because of his stature. If I heard that, okay. I don't get it as like he said he couldn't play. I just say that it's natural, I think, for a guy who played in a different time. And you know that, Chris. Now you can't even touch anybody defensively. It's a foul. It's just the game has changed a lot, and to LeBron's benefit. You know what I mean? Like when you're that much bigger and stronger than everybody else, and you can't physically do anything, I think that gives him an advantage. But I'm not bothered by what Rasheed said.
I'm not bothered by it. It's his opinion, so he can say what he wants. But I strongly disagree. He said held his own, Rob. Held his own, what does that mean? Does that mean he's pretty good? He's all right. I mean, who's holding their own today? Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine's like a 26, 27-point scorer. Zach LaVine, I would not say Zach LaVine's holding his own. Zach LaVine is balling. He's above holding his own. So holding his own, somebody that's holding their own, I mean, PJ Tucker's holding his own. I mean, and I don't think Rasheed thinks he would have been that. But I would say that what Rasheed was saying is he would not have been a superstar. Would have been good. Star.
But he didn't say
legit.
that.
Well, what do you think holding his own means?
I still think he was saying that he would have fit in and he would have been able to play and be, maybe not the second best player in some people's mind all time. Maybe he's not there. Maybe he's in the top 5, but maybe he's not second if they had different rules. You know what I mean? I don't think it wasn't like, oh, he wouldn't be able to play. Oh, he would have been a bum. Oh,
well,
he wouldn't have been.
Of course not.
He wouldn't be the top. That's not what he said.
Don't even speak on the mic anymore if you're gonna say LeBron couldn't have played in that era. But I'm stunned because, and again, you're right. Who we don't know exactly what she meant by holding his own, but holding his own is not usually described of a superstar. Holding his own certainly isn't dominant. And I'm going to tell you, Rob, I think had LeBron James played from 1995 on, obviously that's the tail end of Jordan's era, I think LeBron would have been just as great as he is now. I think LeBron would have still been second only to Michael Jordan. Now, he would not have entered the league as that. He would not have won a championship during Jordan's era just because LeBron was still young. He didn't even win the championship that early in his career when Jordan was even gone. But I don't see how in the world, because LeBron is not just big. LeBron is physical too. And I think he would have been even like, here's what I say. When people talk about Michael Jordan, oh, he didn't shoot the three very well. He was a 33% shooter from three. That was a weakness. First of all, it wasn't a weakness because back then it just wasn't a huge part of the game for most players, most great players even. And Jordan's three-point shooting percentage is the same as Kobe's. And while Kobe was not known as a three-point shooter, you never would have said that's a weakness. Like, oh, he's a horrible three-point shooter. He was okay at it, and that's what Jordan was. But here, what I say, Rob, is had Jordan played today, he would have been a very good three-point shooter because he would have worked on it. And just like you've said many a time, Rob, when he entered the league, he was not a jump shooter. He was a slasher, a driver to the basket, doing it in the paint at the rim, and he developed into arguably the greatest mid-range shooter of all time. And
if he wanted to survive, he realized that he couldn't keep doing that, playing that way. That was the Pistons and Knicks, like giving the business every night.
Every night. And so just like I say Jordan would have developed a three-point shot had he played today, Rob, I believe LeBron would have adjusted and adapted to the physical nature of the game. He's certainly strong enough. He's certainly big enough, quick enough, athletic enough. And he was a football player, too. I know it was high school, but he was a guy that could have played big-time college football had he chosen to go that route. So I don't think you can question his toughness. I get it. People see him, he gets hurt or gets hit and he falls and, he acts like it's a career-threatening injury as he's getting up and he takes his time. Jim Brown used to do the same thing. So, and nobody would call Jim Brown soft. So I don't think there's any question that LeBron would have been a more physical player if the era dictated it. He would have had to. And he still would have been able to get to the rim, attack the rim, and all of that. LeBron is the size, Rob, of Karl Malone. And yet, a better outside shooter. He could have run the floor like Malone. Probably would have developed more of a post game, too. And I just think, and like you said, Sheed, I don't even view this as, this is Sheed's opinion. So I'm not saying it's an insult. He's dissing LeBron. He's entitled to his opinion. It didn't come off like that. They asked him a question, and he answered it. And you know what? It would have been different. And I don't know whose podcast that was. But we talk about it all the time, Chris. The problem with people who do podcasts who aren't, trained journalists, trained interviewers, have them explain what that means. Like, right. Follow it up. Follow it up. Just like we talked about, right? What do you mean? What does hold his own mean? What does hold his own mean? Would he be a bum? What does that mean to you? Who would he have been? Do you know what I mean? Would he still have been the first or second best player in NBA history? Or you telling me he's out of the top 10? You got to make Rasheed give you something. Hello? If you're doing a podcast or you're out there, dude, ask follow-up questions. Listen to the person you're interviewing and have them explain it when they give you something vague. Hello? He was so hooked on his little beast or soft thing because he did follow up with beast or soft. Right, but that wasn't enough. Right. We want to know. We want to know. Now, that is the podcast, Rob, of Gilly the Kid, who's a former rapper. Is he former? I'm sure he'd still drop a bar, a hot 16 here or there, right? If he can get on somebody's track, somebody give him a beat. So maybe he's a rapper. Maybe not a former rapper. But anyway, Gilly the Kid. But I agree with you, Rob. You got to follow that up. And I just think it is interesting, Rob, because you hear this with a lot of players. Kenny Smith, I think at one time, didn't have LeBron in his top 10.
Exactly.
Now he does. Charles Barkley, just put LeBron in his top 5, I think. Like, it's interesting. I feel like some of the older heads underestimate LeBron, or I would say underrate him at times. And I don't think it can be denied that, in my opinion, Rasheed is underrating LeBron. I mean, I get it. If you want to say, and this is a guy that I think is tremendous. I think he's the best small player ever. If you want to say, though, that Steph Curry might have been a different player back in that era where it was more physical, you could hand check, you could hammer guys on their way to the basket, then I can rock with that a little bit, at least a little bit. But LeBron, do you think, Rob, he wouldn't have been able to handle the philosophy?
No, he would have had to. I mean, he would have had to.
And he's got the body, right, to handle it.
He would have had to, because that's, you adapt to what you can do. I remember LeBron used to run people over. You remember that? Just
right,
like just bulldoze people over and get the calls or whatever. And it's just a different game. But yeah, I just thought Rasheed was responding, but I didn't think it was like, oh, he can't play, he's a bum, he would be out of my top 20 if he played in our era. Not at all. Not at all.
One thing that's interesting, I'll tell you what, the eras are incredibly different.
I was going to say,
I've talked to a player.
Too.
I talked to a player from back in the day, not back in the day, it was like Rasheed's era. And he said, he actually said it this way: the days of comparing players from my era to today are over. He said it's almost impossible because the game is so different. Back then, and she said this, it was inside out back then. We're going to do it. We're going to do our best to compare, but it is so different. I mean, Rob, you watch games from back in the day and like the 90s, so obviously the 80s, but the 90s, and the game was around the paint.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, everything was around the paint. Guys would pass up open 19-footers all the time if they weren't like shooters. And even if they were sometimes, or
not only that,
a decent shooter.
Like that Pistons run when they won that championship, Chris, in 2004, you remember, they were scoring 83 points and winning.
Right.
You remember, they held, was it 11 straight games or 13 opponents under 80 points, Chris? Like it was incredible.
No, my first team I covered as a beat writer, 95-96 season, was the Cleveland Cavaliers. Mike Fratello was the coach. Terrell Brandon, Bobby Fields, Chris Mills, Michael Cage, guys like that. Right, the Czar. They weren't one of the most talented teams in the league. So what Fratello did, the Czar, was slow it down, Rob. And Rob, it was commonplace. I don't even mean once a week. It was commonplace for their games to be in the 70s.
Right.
Commonplace. And sometimes in the 60s, occasionally. Like, it was just a much different game, much more physical, much more inside, out than today's game. So it's different, but I do disagree with Rasheed. I think LeBron would have been just as dominant as he is today, in a slightly different way. But I still think he would have emerged as the second best player of all time. But now it's time to throw it out to you.